I used to wonder, where is this universe going? What is going on, right? One of the big patterns in the universe is matter organizing itself towards complexity. There is no right or wrong quality versus quantity, and sometimes quantity also gives quality, right? Build it for yourself. So when you build something, you build it for yourself. But at the same time, you are more in the universal mindset when you're building for yourself. I wasn't able to find a path in science, and ended up into the journey of creating software.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan. Chances are, if you are in Bangalore, you might have used the Namma Yatri app to hail an auto rickshaw. And what if I told you that this app was actually built by a fintech company? When I dived deeper, I realized that Juspay wasn't just a fintech company, it's an engineering company that's trying to solve population scale problems, right? So today we have Vimal, who's the co-founder of Juspay and Namma Yatri and other innovations, perhaps, to talk about their journey and the various facets of their business. So welcome to the podcast, Vimal. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you.
It's awesome to have you on the podcast. While doing some amount of research, I realized that, your journey is fascinating, and also your thinking, your mindset is very, very fascinating. It's quite different. I was watching your Sunicon Summit speech, and, I did not for the life of me realize that you'll talk about fractals and, all of those things, right? But at the heart of, I think, your problem-solving approach is the first principles method, right? Which I think a lot of startup folks relate to as well. I mean, because oftentimes we're looking at something with new eyes, right? How important is first principles thinking for us to solve complex problems, and what's your experience with it?
Sure. I think the definition of first principles itself is contextual. In my own life's journey, first principles, all of us, I think, look forward to first principles. In fact, you talked about grace and music just now, right? Sometime back. That is first principles. In my childhood, most of what I really was after was, finding how things work. Definitely broke a lot of stuff and tried to understand. Was also after simple concepts explaining bigger things. There was a tendency to go and find something simple. This search for something simple, something like Newton's law is explaining everything. When you understood that, you see everything as, everywhere inertia is there.
Right.
You believe it also in a way, some level, right? At that, but we call it understanding. But later you find that, it's an approximation. Newton's law is an approximation. So the first principles is contextual. But it is also, you try to go after something which is very universal. So a lot of math and physics, I related that to first principles till a point in my life. And when I followed it a lot, I still couldn't find the depth of things. I found things to be still having a lot of gap, or it's like, in the real reality, math felt like, here and there, dots only are there. At some point it just felt like, it's just very, very few places only we have covered, few lines here and there, right? And so much is still open. And then I got a bit frustrated and jumped into music for whatever reason, out of no other place to go. Found another kind of first principles, I would say, in aesthetics, which we discussed a little bit before. What is the true subjective experience? At the deeper level, the true subjective experience feels subjective. Feels it's obvious. Yeah. It also is, there is no doubt in it, and it also feels like what you feel, the other is also going to feel. So it is not I like something and another person likes something else. I am seeing something, and others will also see it. Maybe they are already seeing it, I only saw it now.
Right.
Or, somebody else is not seeing it, I want them also to see it. Right. Maybe they don't have the glasses, I just got the glasses now, I saw it. Right. So that is another kind of, what I thought as something which is very not universal, something like arts. I used to think like that. Maybe today I like something, tomorrow I might not like it, but I found a universality in certain types of art, I would say. Last few years there is another kind of learning which happened. Maybe what I thought as very good aesthetic, also some things turn out to be not aesthetic, or you also move on sometimes with that.
Right.
Then another kind of an understanding of empathy also came in, and there is a first principles there also. The empathy is to not see the boundary, I would say. You see a boundary saying, this is something and that is something else, and now you see that, oh, they're all together the same. This versus that, versus the seeing a lot of things as one, or finding the commonality. In fact, the truth feeling was also like that. The beauty feeling was also like that, but the empathy feeling is also like that. And we always relate to empathy to see it as you really understand another person. Oh, what they are going through. Oh, this is how it feels to be them. Oh, this is how it feels to be an animal. Like that, right? Then, oh, this is how it feels to be electricity. Now it goes to physics, the old what we called as the science, also the first principles we called as science. What we felt as inertia. Okay, if I'm a stone in the space, if I'm pushed, I just keep going.
Right.
You kind of feel, oh yeah, I will keep going. If I'm a stone, I will keep going. That is what, in a way, that empathy is, that also is the same, right? So that direct experience, the direct experience of, doubtlessness, you are able to see something without doubt. In fact, we are not getting that most of the time, right? That interest, or that big motivation to go after it, is what I call as first principles.
Wow, that's a very profound answer, right? I'm trying to wrap my head around all of the different strains of thought that I heard. You chose, you wanted to be a scientist, but did you choose software engineering because it makes mathematics a little more tangible? Because, with code, I can move things, right? I can make things.
Yeah.
I can build stuff that people actually feel and experience.
Sure. Absolutely. In fact, there is other side of me which was more of a creator. I was writing games when first time in 10th standard I got access to a computer in a computer center, which was actually 14 kilometers away from my house. I had to catch a bus and go there, and I will get lost there. People thought I am lost. I went so late to home that, I was so much involved in creating things. And yes, the computer gives you the ability to see the results very fast. And that part was there, which to create things and make it work and see it, right? At the same time, I think the science I was not so good in. I wasn't able to understand theory of relativity properly. I wasn't able to understand what is this complex number. So many doubts I had in science that some of my friends were able to get it very more naturally. I was having so many doubts. That probably I then wasn't able to. If I had to do a PhD, I wasn't sure what is the right PhD to do. Because a lot of PhDs also didn't seem like they are going somewhere. And maybe a lot of people publish a lot of papers, but I was more interested in people who publish, the real papers, like the few times they publish. Well, those are also biases, I would say. There is no right or wrong, quality versus quantity, and sometimes quantity also gives quality, right? But I wasn't able to find a path in science, and ended up into the journey of creating software. And there also, I would say that building the typical business logic software, I was quite frustrated in the initial few years of my career, until I found the arts and the beauty which we talked about. In fact, a language called Lisp I found out, and that opened up, made business logic look very beautiful. And we use a lot of Haskell in Juspay, Haskell and Rust, functional programming in Juspay, and that also started from there, the art side.
Wonderful. Yeah, how do you bring this mindset, right? This empathy, this first principles thinking, and all of this, right? How do you bring this mindset to design population scale solutions? Because I think it's very different, right? When you're thinking of solving for a set of users, right, to incorporate all of these different folks, right? Because I mean, India, I think, is very, very diverse,
Yeah.
right? And when you look at sheer numbers, right, I mean, you can make like, I don't know, 20 countries out of the people we have, right? 20 large countries out of the people that we have. So what are those things that you've realized from designing solutions for population scale, right? What are those 2 or 3 things that you have to keep in mind?
One of the things we follow is build it for yourself. So when you build something, you build it for yourself.
Interesting.
But at the same time, you are more in the universal mindset when you're building for yourself. That is, if I am a person in a village, if I am a farmer, will I like UPI? Right? Will it make sense? Like, let's say you are composing music. There are, I sometimes quote somebody like Ilayaraja. We just talked about the Jyote Jyote song in Kannada. Yeah. So his music appeals to the sophisticated audience and a person who's in the village, or even not in a village. Maybe even if a person is in the forest, it will appeal to them. Right. So that kind of work, and he's just doing it. Just in few minutes, he's able to just get it out. Right?
It's weird, right? When I think about it, like, I'm sure that, at Ilayaraja's level, he only cares about what he himself thinks about the work, right? And yet it has such a mass appeal.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, even when you're designing software for a billion people, it's important to consider yourself as the user and design for yourself and make it relevant thereby to all of these people.
Yeah. And even for yourself, if you really ask, what do you really want?
Right.
You will have doubts. You will still be like, no, this is not good. This is not good. It should be better. So then more and more deeper it gets, you will be able to see that, this makes sense. This is like, it is, anybody will like it. Still, sometimes you will see the user research and all that other part of the design. I'm not saying don't do it, right? But in my experience, what I've seen is, first, maybe the user research with yourself is the easiest thing to do, fastest to do.
Right.
And you follow that.
Right.
And then at some point you would want to share. You would want to go and I remember going to the Sagar next to our office and showing what we have built.
Right.
And see how people are, do they like it or not, right? And you see some things people, what you really liked, they also like it. And there are certain areas, what you thought as, people are not at all observing it. Then oh yeah, because of a bias or a context, I was able to see that. So then, in their context, correct, their eye is not moving there. So a lot of times we also say in product design, understanding how attention works. Because even when we talked about music, music is at any point one single line is going on, right? Even if it is a harmony, you are seeing the whole thing as a single thing. So when a person's attention is flowing, it has to smoothly flow in the right way, in the intended way of the product. So that movement at a more deeper level is the same. I feel like it is. You can make it such that everybody will be moving towards the same. See, if you are doing some kind of a modern art, it might have maybe more possibilities. One person will move in one way, another person might move in another way.
Right.
But in terms of population scale products, it is about that simplicity. To get there, you like it, you find it simple, and the others will also see it.
Right.
Then you go and see whether people are seeing what you saw.
Right.
Or you see that others are seeing something you didn't see. A lot of times, 80% you will cover with yourself, 20% that final learning you will get from others. I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. I also feel that when you pick such a problem to solve, right, it has to be a fundamental problem, right? Because it won't apply at that scale, right? Payments, for example, right? Literally everyone pays, right? All adults pay, right? So is that also a factor that you have to pick something that's extremely fundamental?
See, in my experience, initially I used to go after such problems, just search for such kind of problems. How to solve energy, how to solve what is intelligence, how does brain work.
Because I think here we have to give a little bit of context, right? Because you started on payments 10 years back. This is pre-UPI. UPI is 2016, right? So I don't think it was a sexy problem to solve at 10 years back, right? But everyone kind of recognized that it was really, really important, because I've used payment gateways 15 years back, 14, 15
Sure.
years back. I mean, it was dreadful. Like
Sure.
really bad. Payments, transactions would fail all the time, right? And people themselves, right? I don't think they realized how it worked either. They would refresh the page when it's loading, right? And stuff like that. Money would get debited. They would reach out to us. So that time I was working for a company that had online payments, and I went through hell, right? Supporting all these queries and stuff. Right. Yeah. Sorry, I got sidetracked by that.
Yeah, how did we see payments as important, right? See, frankly speaking, initially I didn't see payments as that big, but compared to the other things we had in hand, contextually, found this to be a practical thing which is big enough. Before that, I wanted to solve education. My realization a little bit before Juspay was, see, I am not a great scientist. I haven't, by this time, if I was that good, I would have understood many things. I might have invented things. How to, at least what I know, can I tell others? If at least what I know, if others know, and some ways of working, I thought I also learned from others. One of my roommate, I used to work in AWS. My roommate was an early Google guy. We used to talk about how they used to build these kind of huge systems, and some of the meta learnings that people talk about, and it also made sense for us. How to look at the big picture, how to get into the depth of things, how to switch between the bird's eye view and 2 levels up, 2 levels below. Can we create that thumb rules for thinking? So I was coming up with a bunch of thumb rules for thinking and all, and I thought if these are followed, we will do what we are doing better. So I was thinking about doing something like right now you're doing a broadcast. I thought I will do some videos and very early days, but somehow I was never able to get in front of the camera and talk about what I thought as okay types, something I figured out, because I always had doubt in what I
Right.
There is much more to it. When I started wanting to say something, maybe something more is there to it. So I was not able to, I didn't find anything that universal to tell people, though I wanted to.
Right.
But what was very clear to me was, at least at that time, my context was India. In India, so many people are there, so many engineering colleges are there, so many brains are there. The real potential to unlock is if people do first principles, high quality work. How much can be done? We also thought about open source at that time itself. If everybody builds many things in open source, and West has done a lot of great work in open source. Maybe India has now only gotten introduced with internet and all. India could be like a big contributor to the world with open source. So wanted to encourage that. And during that time, what happened is I also realized, really, I want to do this, but I myself don't know. I don't know what does it take to build a Linux? What does it take to build a MySQL, Postgres? So many great things. What does it take to build an Intel processor? All these engineering big things which have happened, wanted to build something and see. And payment somehow came along the way just by chance. Somebody told that, the payments, you also said, it used to have a lot of problems. Experience was not good. But what was very clear was the billion people will use every day, multiple times.
Yeah.
So, okay, one more understanding in the science realm, had been searching, you talked about, I gave this talk a little bit about fractals and all of that. I used to wonder, where is this universe going? What is going on, right? One of the big patterns in the universe is matter organizing itself towards complexity. So if you take few billions of years before, the universe was less complex. Now it has more complexity.
Do you think that is because of entropy, or
that is called negentropy. That is the opposite of entropy. See, sometimes you can see both sides. Because of entropy only that is happening, or it is the opposite side of entropy. Because entropy is something in which you drop drop of ink into water, it will dissipate.
Right.
But there is also something which makes the ink and creates the bottle of ink. Right?
Okay.
So you can call it the creative force. Some people call it the force of life and all. Right?
Right.
So what makes atoms to come together and form a molecule? What makes polymers out of atoms? What makes the cells? what makes the organisms, and what is making the organisms making things like computers and all these things, right? So what is this whole thing which is happening, right? And I found some paper or some article talking about which showed the data that the neg entropy in the universe is also exponentially increasing. It took 1 billion years from a single cellular organism to become a multicellular organism.
Okay.
It took 1 million years between animals and human beings.
Right.
And where is it going to go right now? And one of the other realizations when you, let's say, zoom into the last few hundreds of years is the human creation, all this science, engineering, and all technology and all of that is also exponentially increasing. Like the amount of complexity in architecture, in civil engineering versus mechanical is higher. And architecture was there for thousands of years, mechanical for hundreds of years.
Right.
Then there is electrical and 100 years before, there was a graph one scientist had put in which it showed ethereal, something which could be smaller and more complex, and that turned out to be software.
Right.
And software is really physical act only. Software is nothing but doing things at atomic scale. So you are arranging systems and building build big cities at atomic scale. Or programming is nothing but that. So that is the trend. The trend in the universe looks like arranging material towards more complexity, and that force is focused on the miniaturized forms. And from those, it was very clear that things like mobile phones is going to go everywhere. Things like IoT will happen. It will go everywhere. Nanotech will happen. And all of these have to happen in a proper way. There are also dangers because of all this, right? But it is going to happen, and a way to participate in that is we saw that mobiles are going to go everywhere. These kind of devices are going to go everywhere, and commerce will also happen. What is commerce? Commerce is nothing but it is about exchange and sharing. You created something, I created something. I need what you have. So how do you transact, right? And it is exercise of sharing, and money helps in a better sharing. The properties of money, it is divisible, it is exchangeable to anything else. All these good things about money. And money can also be looked at as analytics of value. Right, and it has to be digitized. It will get digitized, and it will get more sophisticated, right? So I looked at all these payments, etc. as there is going to be better analytics of value, more transparent analytics of value, and it has to be convenient for people to record all these numbers of I gave you something, you gave me something, and that is what a transaction is, right? And it could be bigger than the typical old payments.
Right.
In fact, in Amazon, I used to be part of Amazon Web Services, which had a payments division. There, at that time, there was a crazy idea of really micro payments happening, and that it felt like analytics from that time itself. So, given all of that, we thought it's a worthy problem to solve, and we thought 1 or 2 years we will solve it because it's just moving money between two bank accounts and doing 2FA, right?
Right.
But it's still 10 years we are still getting it, making it better. Yeah.
So order of complexity is increasing in the universe.
Yeah.
Right. We'll start from there to saying that, hey, payments or something, commerce is a shareable thing.
Sharing.
And people, do it every day. How can we make this simple?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Big story.
So, cut to 2023, right? Payments is right now ubiquitous, right? I mean, with the, UPI and so on, we're doing, I don't know how much it is, 100 billion transactions or so on, right? Crazy number of transactions. Today, what is the relevance of a payments company in the sense that it's almost become a utility, it's become a commodity, right? How do you differentiate yourself as a payment company today?
Sure. It's still growing. It is the digitization of India hasn't happened fully yet, right? And not everything in UPI is still growing. It is the market is going to get bigger, and when it is a utility and it gets into all the normal activities and critical activities, reliability is going to be such a big critical thing.
Right.
And when you run these large scale systems, for you to be really confident about it will always run. It's not a figured out problem in software.
So it's a complex problem that increases in complexity with scale.
Yes.
So
more
that
use cases.
fundamental transaction
Yeah.
itself is not something we can take for granted as the scale increases.
Yes. And it is getting into, when people start taking it as it will always work, right? So it has to really work. So we have to care about, and we have to then solve some of the more complex problems in infrastructure, etc. Right? So that is something we are after, the reliability side. And also keeping the cost low. That is also performance, reliability and performance. I used to think it is a solved problem.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking
yeah,
that, right? I thought
yeah.
that payments, the transaction at least is solved. Now it's about everything around that, right? How can we take it to
That is
different use
definitely the
cases?
next, like even in the infrastructure level.
Right.
If you, I used to ask our people, okay, who is going to ensure, who is going to give guarantee that Juspay will never go down? And it will be difficult to find people who will say, it will not go down. I know it. That definiteness, and it also relates to universality. Like that kind of, have we made it, is software systems at a level where that kind of confidence is there.
Yeah.
Right?
Because when you talk about uptime and stuff, right, even a 99.9999 up to some decimal point will not be good enough for you, because that means just because of the sheer scale, some
Yeah.
transactions are going to fail, right?
Yeah, and correct, and there are also possibilities where could there be issues where it could be difficult to recover. It could take some more time. It is, see, a little bit here and there, recoverable, smaller, minor failures are fine. There should never be a large failure.
Right.
So, and there is a lot to learn from nature, the resilience of nature,
Right.
or even the older technologies. For example, when we think about, is this building going to be stable, we are sure.
Yeah.
When we have this debate in our office,
hopefully.
yeah, touch wood. Do you think like this building will fall down? People will say, no. Do you think our database might go down today? They will
That's
say,
another
no.
question.
Simple, right? So then we can say, okay, let's put multiple databases and let's have the failover, etc., properly done. But what if are they really isolated? Will the same issue happen in both? Because one interesting part about failovers is it is multiplication of failure probability. If the probability of one failing is 1 by 1,000, two together failing, if they are isolated, is 1 by million.
Correct.
So it is, in that regard, that's a very first principles way of truly doing redundancy right. But always when you look for redundancy is abundance. One other first principle is going after abundance. I'm just remembering now. You go after, you can say go after big things. You can say go after the real stable stuff.
Right.
Where will I get that rock solid? I can put my neck in the line. Kind of. How can I be that confident, right? So, and in the path to abundance, there is always scarcity, is what I found out. Because if you have two databases, you have to have some system which will be a switch on top of it, which will become a single point of failure.
Right.
Now you replicate that. Then who is going to be above that, which will again become a single point of failure? You might do some kind of a DNS switch. Then the DNS system will become a single point of failure. Okay, then you do a raft algorithm and do leader election. Still a leader is there, but if the leader fails, you can switch to another leader. But what if raft algorithm has a bug or the code has a bug in it? So there is finally that assurance comes from simplicity. Let's say you are a person who's designing it. I know it will work. I know this cup exists. It should be as simple as that. So that is and to get systems which are also very diverse and evolving, you now see also the diversity in payments, and also simple and having the stability is not an easy problem. And when the scale is increasing, we are constantly working on approaches to improve the stability, which is maybe few companies in the world only would think like that. And India is at that scale, and you can, as you said, it is a utility for everybody, and that bar is needed. And and every system also has there is no single one solution. Let's say Google has done it in a way, Facebook has done it in a way, the Juspay for UPI, there is a lot of learning, a lot of commonness also, but there is also an art in it.
Right.
There is something which are different.
Right.
That you have to figure out, and you have to know, your architects or your principal engineers, you have to, everybody, I would say more people in Juspay have to know that this will work, this will have that reliability, right? So anyway, I'm talking a lot about reliability, but on top of that also there is a lot of variety which is coming in.
Right.
That also the diversity. When
Right.
you build a reliable platform, lot of opportunities on top of the payments, the next level which also we build.
like subscriptions, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Checkout, like a little bit above payments, some extra features.
Right.
There is one project where if you store the address, it can be reused. Certain types of merchants would want it.
Right.
Somebody will ask for ticketing. Can you also take care of some part of ticketing?
Right.
You can have payments as a backend, but somebody will say, I want end-to-end. Give me a fully configurable end-to-end payment page.
Right.
In fact, our primary product right now is end-to-end payments. That portion of the payments portion of the app is completely run by us. And we are maintaining it. We call it a micro app, which is plugged in. And the merchants want it to be very, very configurable. And since it is in the core flow, they want some control also in it. So how do you design systems in which you are maintaining it and merchant also can have it completely feels like their app, but extremely configurable, and Juspay is running it. Right. So some of these are we found it to be when you want to have it as a platform which is unified, at the same time diversity it's promoting.
Right.
It has to become a platform which is
it's not a product anymore. It's a platform basically.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. I'm never going to take payments for granted. I mean, there is just so much of complexity involved. So today India has the best, I won't even say perhaps the best, I will say the best payment infrastructure in the world, right? How do you think it happened, right? From idea and conception to execution, as someone who's been around in this payment space for 10 plus years, right? How did we get there?
Sure. The UPI is definitely the one which made it happen, right? Maybe I will talk about my take, my learnings, reflecting back.
Right.
2 years before UPI launched, we met Pramod Verma, who is the architect of UPI. We just met him in some other event, and what our learning had been as how payment system has to be. In our second year of Juspay, we had been thinking about it has to be direct bank-to-bank transfer, and 2FA has to be OTP less. The device has to be bound, and the fact that the transaction is happening from that device, that is what OTP also ensures,
right.
The presence of the SIM card.
Right.
So you have another way of doing it without using SIM card, without OTP.
Right.
And that is going to be much more easy and scalable and reliable, because OTP might come or not come, but this will always work.
Right.
So UPI uses that. So we already had been thinking that is the right approach. And there used to be questions when Juspay started that a lot of entrepreneurs, companies used to say, why 2FA? West doesn't have 2FA. We believed RBI's decision to have 2FA is the right thing. In fact, the West will follow. So some of the things like that, India has taken the right decisions to have 2FA. And because of 2FA, fraud is not there. As much as some other kinds of fraud, but minuscule compared to the scale at which payments is going on, right? And it is it's a right, simple thing which has been done, which has given huge amount of advantage. But the 2FA was a problem. It was a big friction point. And we were always looking for innovation to make 2FA smooth, like a silent 2FA, in fact, right? So when we met Pramod, whatever we thought as right, he's saying that as obvious, that is the right thing to do, and there has to be a protocol. And the idea at that time he was talking about was IMPS is already there, and top of the IMPS rails, it is easy to plug in another system with the simplest experience, with the 2FA, and everything was not figured out, like VPA concepts and all were not there. We were also just looking at bank-to-bank instant transfer, which IMPS is giving. On top of that, a simple 2FA. Why will it will work? And the only question we didn't know was, will banks and all come together and make it happen? Because my experience before UPI was, we tried to do something with the banks and it didn't work out. We were not able to. We were a small company, but we were naive to go and...
This was NPCI basically. NPCI before NPCI.
This was before NPCI. When Juspay was small...
Right. No, you mean the union of banks and so on, right?
No. We just, as a small company with 5-10 people, we went and tried to convince banks. This is before you would see Juspay auto-reading OTP. Before that product, we thought OTP itself should not be there. So we will go and give software for the banks.
You'll authenticate it through either the SIM or something else.
Something else, like first time.
Device unique thing.
Yeah, first time you register the device using the OTP.
Right.
And after that, you can remember a key inside the phone in a secure way. So because even the SIM card is nothing but a private key inside the SIM card. See, finally authentication is about you are physically protecting a private number. And you are only sending an essence of that number called a digital signature. So even SIM card does that only with the telecom with the telephone network, right? And OTP is a very indirect way of verifying that number. But if there is a way to securely store that number ourselves with the SDK, it will become a very, very smooth, silent 2FA, and the onboarding to that can happen through OTP, or we can also do step up whenever we want to double verify SIM card if some small risk checks. So we built such a system initially, but that didn't work out. I don't think we were able to convince. But when UPI happened, we thought this is the right thing to do. But we were still small. We were the real entry to UPI happened when we were giving feedback to the volunteers who were building UPI with whatever we knew from the cards world. But the entry happened when we entered into a bank. Where we were trying to see, can we make NEFT better and all of that. We were trying to explore that with the banks. But at that time, a bank asked, can you build UPI infrastructure? And it turned out to be for some larger merchants are interested. And the larger merchants actually really liked that we are getting in, and because of our reputation with the success rate improvement, the OTP reader, Juspay Safe. So all of that happened, and then only we started getting introduced to the people who create UPI. See, when you're asking this whole this ecosystem driven way, however it is, right? It is open source has happened a lot in the West. We saw a bunch of volunteers working like this in India, and the right thing, and we also wanted to contribute and wanted to be part of it. And I think that, and we have done some parts. A lot of other things have been done by very many other people, in this. I think that energy which probably went into the blockchain and the Bitcoin in the West probably went into a bit more a centrist, or it was not too much capitalistic. It was not too much, totally, no capitalism kind of a thing. So we right now we reflect, and I call it India has a very integral approach, an integral approach of thinking for the people, the community first. So the way I would say the people who are behind UPI, they were always thinking for people. That I know from my direct experience of talking to them and working with them, right? And they were also very practical that, it has to be done through the banks. It can't.
You can't bypass the banks.
That also, for me also, it was practical, right? It was not like, somebody is creating something out. So to take that very community-driven approach and somehow to bring in the bureaucracy, the banks, and it's an art, right? You need to. I'm learning how all that happened, and at some point, how to bring the capitalism, how to bring like a phone pay, Google Pay. How to have a role for them also in this equation.
How to make it viable for people to actually build businesses and make money out of this.
So, money also was also not easy to make, but at scale you can make. So that was it was not easy that, money means you have that much per transaction, right?
Because I think the pushback was that this will destroy the payments industry, right? Because, even last week we covered this MasterCard CFO who was making some remarks that, this is unsustainable and so on and so forth, right? Because the typical MDR, right, went down to zero with UPI, right? And so who was going to pay for it and so on and so forth. I've always argued that payments is a utility, right? It's like how the government builds railways and roads and whatnot and ensures, potable water, etc. Government has to invest in this because it's a universal good for us, right? It's made our internet monetizable. So today, two people in any corner of the country for any amount, right, from one rupee onwards, right, can transact. Now that it unlocks a level of productivity and innovation that is overwhelmingly good for the country, right? So it must be seen as an investment in a utility, right? That's how I've perceived it. Right? But I don't know. What was the thinking that time?
See, I also personally always like utility,
right?
But I also have found that practically speaking, you need the sustainability part. That the capitalism gives an ability for you to what you build. For that itself, people pay.
Correct.
So the loop where taxpayers' money is taken and invested, that is a much larger loop, right? So there are different types of value chains, but this is a bit more direct value chain, which is very easily understandable, right? So I think in that regard, that point is there. And see, when we worked on UPI for initial years and all, we thought, that will be figured out, but we didn't know it will become zero MDR. That also is not. See, there are lots of people. There is government also involved. All these are there, right? So it is not like most of the initial work for UPI is to make the protocol work, going with first principles. The bank only has the money, so from the bank, how to make the bank-to-bank transfer simple, and it has to be a utility. Utility means it has to be low cost.
Correct.
So in some way, there is a way to monetize. That is how companies like Juspay are surviving, right? Could there be better ways? Yeah, we would love to. If you ask my
you are a B2B model, right? So which means that, I mean, you provide the payment operating system or infrastructure for other companies to kind of incorporate. So you don't earn per transaction per se, right? I mean, you earn from. So how do you monetize?
It is a SaaS service, but it is per transaction. Per transaction, but it is a very, very nominal fee, and we look at scale. Okay. So that is how since it's a software problem and software can be really optimized and scaled, it becomes sustainable in that way, right? But if there is more money to be made, you can take it and invest in more R&D for us to do more. Always it's great to get more if it is possible, because it is also possible that there will be people willing to pay. So there are some places where I think that it can be completely commoditized, and there are certain places where it
more
can
complex use cases and stuff.
More complex use cases, or the kind of value this payment system is adding is higher that those merchants will be willing to pay. Right. I think that would be the MasterCard's point, because it is in many places it's working. People are willing to pay. Right. The other argument is, okay, make this a utility platform, make it super.
No, I think to your point, right, I think that's absolutely true, right? I can totally pay for UPI payments, right? I think it doesn't have to be free for me or for you as well, right? Beyond a certain transaction amount, for sure. I mean, it can be free for the flower vendor on the street. It can be free for vegetable vendors and whatnot, right? Hawkers and so on. But it does not have to be free for a certain
merchant. In fact, customers it can be. Customer doesn't need to pay. Even in the older systems, it was not like that.
Yeah. So if I'm accepting payments and I'm an established,
large company,
certain revenue generating, I mean, I can definitely pay for it, right? And it'll always be cheaper than whatever is the other cost.
Correct.
But I always had this thought that, you're a pure play payments company, right? Which means that, like if you look at some of your competitors, if I would say, right, either they've gone the lending route, right, where they've tried to, give credit to, let's say, merchants and so on with all of their transaction history, or they've become merchants themselves, right? If you look at PhonePe or Paytm and so on, right? But you choose to be a pure play payment provider.
Like, sure.
How does that work?
See, we are making money per transaction, and it is small and it is at a larger scale. In that regard, there are revenues. There is value which is created, and in some way or the other, like a merchant is willing to pay. Maybe as a software fee, right? Which is still a percentage of the transaction. So that is anyway there, and as long as we are the reliability, performance, and the variety of use cases, we are in the forefront giving that to the merchant. It's huge amount of value for them, right? Even very big merchants, if they build it themselves, it is a huge cost for them, right? In that regard, it makes sense. It is a total value play. And being pervasive everywhere also opens doors for, let's say, opening the opportunity of credit. And some of those are also opening up. We are also there in. We have invested in the credit protocols, open credit enablement network. And also a lot of, like, the EMIs in cards. Maybe a debit card, can it be used to give a EMI on? So there are various innovation. Finally, credit comes to if the customer has the capacity to pay, and if the product for which they are buying is of value.
Right.
Then they will happily buy it and it will be of value and they will pay back, right?
Right.
If that understanding is there, when we are in the transaction, always to help a customer get a product which otherwise they don't have money for right now, which could be valuable for their lives. I always look at the right good
Right.
credit, right?
Right.
That is happening. That is already happening, and it is going to increase. It is going to scale.
Right.
So we are also in the right place where at some level it is happening. We are enabling others to give credit through our platform.
Right.
And I feel the true credit innovation will be like payments. Will be like you won't be doing so much verification per customer all the time. So you will get onboarded, and it will be like you also have a credit tap with you, something like a card or a cardless card, right? Credit on UPI is also coming in, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of sachet-sized loans, contextual loans, and it's almost like system monitoring. You are the cost per transaction should be so less, but you should be able to how you manage systems and find alerts and risks and all of that. That way of building a large scale distributed system, which is how we talked about stability of systems. I look at credit as how to reduce risk. Zero downtime for our systems, zero risk, giving buffer to people. So it is actually like sometimes it's a little bit of a bouncer for people, just little bit push them up with credit, or it acts as a shock absorber. So it's not a rocket. So sometimes people think credit is like, credit is big. You can't give credit to a lot of people like that, right? In fact, you might make a person worse by giving credit and make them spend on something and they have to pay back. But there are a lot of use cases where credit is, it has to be like a utility, as you said.
Yeah. No, I mean, it reminds me of this scam that, cooperative banks and so on would run in small villages, right? Where, let's say I come and deposit some cash with you. That cash is off the books, it's lent out to a few people. And this could be like, of the order of few hundred rupees or maybe like that. And they would have atrocious interest rates on that, right? 20%, 25% and so on. And people would return almost intraday, right? By the end of the day, you would get that money back. I mean,
absolutely ridiculous, right? All that is, in fact, in those areas, that's where the risk is less. For example, take Namma Yatri, the auto drivers. We know a lot of auto drivers have been driving for 20, 30, 40 years. And they are consistently doing it. And they need that small buffer.
Correct.
Let's say I want an extra 5,000 rupees.
Or something.
Yeah. So small money. And if that kind of a buffer in their lives have to be like a utility. It has to be easily accessible. What if we do daily repayments? Risk reduces. Sometimes when you forget it, you might end up losing that money. When you have the money, prioritize paying for the credit. I think it is also that mindset, making it easy to repay.
I feel like this can be only built by something like you, right? Like a Juspay or something, because I feel like the what do you call it? The scale, right, that you have is a key attribute to this, right? I mean, because there's a difference between lending, let's say 40 or 50 lakhs versus lending 100 rupees, right? The business model has to sort of suit the suit this, right, in order for you to be able to do that. And I think, I mean, someone like you is like very well positioned to solve that, I feel.
Yeah. And that understanding of that sachet size, and it has to feel like it's obvious to give credit here.
No,
and
there is no
risk.
Like, I mean, if you don't make two repayments, then you're not eligible for another loan, right? Now you can survive a 100 rupee loss or 200 rupee loss or even a 2,000 rupee loss, right? So I mean, it's fascinating.
But what if there are a lot of pockets, like the example you talked about, where let's say a flower vendor, that is typically taken as an example in the DPG DPI of credit. Takes 100, 200 rupees and pays back some percentage per day, right? And they are doing that work every day. Risk is very, very less, right? And maybe once in a while, somebody somewhere might not be able to pay, but at larger scale, at the it's a very large scale problem. A lot of people need that kind of and technology and that utility based thinking for making technology and that reliability thinking stability thinking.
Yeah.
So bring all of that into, what is that, what is the theory behind going after the right pockets where people are definitely going to pay back.
Right.
Why will they not pay back? It is so useful for them, and they understand.
Absolutely.
So to make all of that happen, I think it's going to happen. It's sometimes that mindset also needs to happen in people. And sometimes those right partners also surface the people, the population to whom the credit makes sense.
I mean, I think also because now if I were to build a business specifically like that, I mean, the sheer amount of customer acquisition costs that I will have to bear is just, it makes it unviable. Now, if I have to go and get 100 million customers, for example, it's crazy. Or even 10 million customers. It's insane, right? For me to think about it. But for you, where payments is the tip of the spear and you're already transacting, right? You're already in the thing, right? So it makes it a lot more viable for you.
In fact, it becomes like a product for the others who are already having customers. And it becomes like a good, simple utility. It has to be looked at that way.
And informally it works, right? I mean, like merchants give out loans anyway. Right? So interesting. So when you talk about future of payments, right? I mean, there was this whole proposal on UPI 2.0. You mentioned loan on UPI. I also feel that it will become some kind of a financial management app by itself, right? Where you can check your expenses and so on and so on. Something simple. UPI 2.0 and beyond, what do you see the future of payments?
See, some of the other next other areas apart from financial management and all, making payments even more simple. UPI Lite is another.
Through
idea.
SMS and
even in the app, in the app without entering the PIN.
Right.
Let's say how FASTag works. What if FASTag like experience can be given for more use cases? So UPI to take it to how cash works, where it's really decentralized. With lesser connectivity also can it work.
Right.
So building that kind of robustness and easiness for the very smaller micro use cases. I typically like that scale and that excitement of that part of that.
Right.
Apart from that, as we discussed, the credit side is there. The investment and money management side, typically I don't think much like that. For me, typically money management seems more worthwhile for organizations only. Personal is simple only. Some simple rules might just work out. In fact, how to make more money, how to create more value is the bigger problem than how much can we manage. Ideally, somebody has to simplify that, right? If we do this investment here, we will get more money, less money. I've also been early on in my journey a bit like that, but like as a retail investor, I don't know much. Really, I don't have the big picture, right? In fact, I can rather put my energies on creation and value creation, my work, right? Well, see, in that regard, B2B payments is a big area, another big area, what we are seeing. Because those are still very cumbersome. People still use NEFT. They have to have a lot of people managing reconciliation issues. That's another division we have, getting into the B2B space and solving the whole operations problem there. And another thing is, on top of payments, more use cases could come in. The more newer types of commerce use cases, like ONDC is opening up a new, another dimension to whole commerce. And what is the right payment methods for ONDC? Right. So such kind of opportunities will open up, I feel.
So you mentioned Namma Yatri, right? How did Namma Yatri come about? I mean, you have investors, you have board members. What did they think of this idea that, you are a payments company, but you will suddenly go off and build something in mobility?
We have always been known for, we will do these ecosystem projects.
Right.
And our investors have seen the success of UPI, and we invested on it very early on in non-typical ways. And the benefits for that came much later, right? And also the value creation and a lot of indirect benefits of that is also something our investors are seeing. To be a credible player in a larger country like India, You have to, that first principles work, ecosystem work, like that capitalism plus community. We feel the new companies will be community focused. So I think investors are also, a lot of investors are have the buy-in for that, right? It is not the in that regard, these ideas are like UPI works. I think that made a good case. And when we are always paying it forward, how the beckon protocol came into us was, what if we open up transportation and create a protocol? So Pramod, Sujit, they had been thinking about it. That's when I first got introduced to Sujit. So just as a engineer, very, like, let's say we are, I got to know about this just, and I have a free time and I'm just thinking about, okay, oh, it's interesting. Transportation will get digitized. Like we talked about, digitization will happen everywhere, right? Yeah. And I also know that the digitization that has happened for cabs, etc., is very small compared to the scale of the world, of India, the world. Right. The real digitization of transportation, how much it can happen, there is no framework of thought for it. And in payments itself, we have always been interested in the scale of, can ticketing happen? Can bus tickets be bought with payments? And somehow it has not happened yet, right? And because there is a lot of very fragmented, governments run everywhere, they run their own smaller unit, let's say bus transport corporations and all of that. So somehow I thought, to get in with the typical scan QR and pay is not enough, right, to get into this industry. From a payments company perspective, unless we build something around it, like a ticketing system, something else which makes it super easy for, let's say, BMTC to manage tickets. Somebody gets into the bus, gets out of the bus, automatically they are taken care of. So we were thinking about what is the right payments method for transportation, which is cardless. Because most of the examples are, there is a travel card. Europe is full of that, right? But they were all done when mobile was not there. What is the right way to do when mobile is there? How Uber has solved cab booking, what is the equivalent of that for public transport? So some of this thought had been there. And when we heard about beckon protocol, maybe we thought somebody is going to solve this.
Right. Just to clarify at this point of time, beckon protocol is basically a machine readable language that allows two platforms to interact.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Would you like to add?
Yeah. See how it started is, it started first for mobility. Mobility, just like payments, is a reasonably simpler problem to solve, even compared to commerce, because the use cases are simple. And it is more near, ticketing is more like just near transactions, right? So but one of the, I came into picture after many of these ideas are already written. I saw a paper and it is all published. It's just that it is there. And when I got introduced itself, Pramod had already thought about the supply and the demand has to be separated out. The place where you book a ticket, the place where the inventory is maintained.
It should not be restricted by platforms. Basically.
Yeah, it is an open system. It's a network rather than a platform. Right. Rather than a closed platform, right, it has to be an open network. How payments is an open network.
So can you explain the difference between a network and a platform, right? Because oftentimes I think that's what people get wrong with, let's say myself included, about ONDC, about how that will work, or how, let's say, some of these other things work, right? How does it reflect? I mean, like, do I go to a specific app, or is there is there some kind of an API, some kind of a language between two platforms that creates a separate iframe in a app and shows me something else? Or how does it work?
In fact, language is a good analogy, right? So you can talk about app as a very high level thing, which is very specific, right?
Most tangible,
most tangible. Right. But more lower you go, it gets into a protocol or a language. Right. So if you create a language and the language is just an open spec, right, and people agree to that, right, that itself makes a more collective system possible. It doesn't need to be one person who is building multiple parts of the system. right? Because you have come up with something which people agree on, which is a protocol. And I build one part of it, another person builds another part, and still the whole thing will work together, right? Like, for example, in this case, if let's say Google Maps adds a functionality to book bus tickets, right? But the vendor who is providing software for the bus corporation, or let's say BMTC or anybody else, right? And that's very fragmented area. How will both of them talk? They are very far away, right? And to also ensure that commonness, the quality and all of that. See, first at least there is a common language which is required, right? Then you need a gateway like NPCI, right? But the decision which was taken in Beacon was also that there is no single gateway. We'll make the way to run a gateway also open, and there can be many gateways. We will only define the protocol and the methodology, some kind of a guideline to run a gateway. And many people can also run gateways, so that whichever gateway is the best, they will all follow the same protocol, right? So what does this gateway do? This gateway is the one which will be like an exchange which will match the demand and supply. Let's say there are lots of the auto rickshaw union is providing their inventory into the system. Let the bus transport corporation is giving their inventory. Somebody starts like an electric sharing auto, something like that, and they put their inventory into the system, right? But in the other side, there is Paytm, PhonePe, Google Maps, and anybody else, maybe an Alexa, right? Who can plug in into the system and have access to this inventory, because they are more customer side, and the other side is more the business side, the one who runs the service, right? So the service provider focus versus the customer focus, there are these two types of focus, and we have to marry these two things together. And it is.
How is this different from an API? Because API also is the same thing, right? I mean, somewhat, like again, very naive view, right? I want to exchange information with two different applications, right? API one, I will give you whatever you query. I mean, I will give you that specific information, right?
Sure.
Is that the same?
In fact, the language we are talking about is primarily APIs.
Okay.
Right? The APIs and the data model around it.
Right.
It is also, in fact, that whole API and the workflow.
Right.
See, I might not be the biggest expert right now in the terminologies, because some of these are also changing, and sometimes one of the terminology means one and another. You should ask somebody like Sujit in Beacon Foundation for him what is the right terminology. But if you ask,
I think he corrected me on Twitter, I think, because I mentioned ONDC as a platform, and he said, no, it's a network.
Sure.
Him or someone else. So I always remember that, right?
Sure.
So so it's okay, for sake of simplicity, it's an API framework.
Internet, you take internet, right? So it doesn't need to be, see, the current systems are more API based.
Right.
If you take something like TCP/IP protocol,
right.
It is
it's universal.
Basically. It is the data structure, the real communication, the format of the messages, and the way in which the messages will be exchanged is defined. Okay. And the current way of building application logic software to do this work is through APIs.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And if there is anything else other than API also in case, that could also be part of these systems. APIs are there, but we need some monitoring information. We need to collect and we need to publish it, and that health has to be managed. If there is a specification for that, that also can be a part of it. Right? So the language part, and it will keep evolving, the traceability part of it. What went wrong? Because one of the problems or the challenges in a more unbundled open system is more parties are involved.
Correct.
And there is more loosely coupled system it is. And
how do you control the end last mile
experience, right? That reliability, it's a bit harder to ensure reliability. But we have seen in internet that even, like, for example, let's say you send a request to let's say a site or you do a ping to some website, and you do a trace route. It actually goes through so many hops. Still, it's so reliable. So many packets are going through so many hops back and forth. It feels like so many people are working together. Still, it works. So there is always this beauty in certain solutions where even when multiple pieces come together and it looks like, they are all not run by the same person, still it will work,
Right.
So that is the beauty of design of these systems, right?
But if let's say if I have a problem with the internet, I know who to call, right? How does that work with something like this,
Sure.
right? Let's say ONDC, right? Buyer is somewhere, seller is somewhere.
Yeah.
The payments solution could be something. The logistics person could be something else. There might be another value-added service in between in the chain, etc. Right? All these 4-5 people somehow working together to give me what I want. Right? Let's say I ordered some murukku or something from somewhere, right? Now, let's say I have a problem with delivery.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to talk to one person. If I have a problem with the food, I'll have to talk to one other person. If I have a problem with let's say the app experience, right? Who do I talk to, etc.
So you will talk to the node which is closest to you. You will talk to the buyer app. Let's say you booked in PhonePe. PhonePe's customer service should give you that single experience. Okay. And there is a protocol for them to do the dispute resolution and traceability with the rest of the players, right? And it is the discovery, the booking, and tracing, and also dispute resolution. All these are made into protocols, and all of them, when they are, and there is also standards to ensure that the protocol is properly, everybody has implemented, and it is also constantly monitored. Right. And all this is currently in the making. More and more, everything is getting put together and getting better and better, right? So that is the broader idea of this. Right. So what does it truly unlock? Why is it like maybe even the systems which were closed were also working? Why to open it up, right? So that could be a question, because it's a little bit more complex, because there are more players. You have to do this extra tracing, but a good design in these systems also solve with less amount of effort and energy. Also, you will get reliability. But the whole idea is that the amount of potential available in the amount of people, if opportunity is opened to them, if they are putting their creative energies, right? The amount of systems which will be digitized and at the same time transparent would be phenomenal, right? Yeah. So that, I think that one of my take on Beck and ONDC is it is very service provider focused. At least mostly for services. Product side is there, services are there. Services are another area which has to be really unlocked. India has a lot of people who can provide a lot of good services, and all of them will get digitized, and new services will come up. And the open platforms, even you can look at Namma Yatri is living and trying to innovate, still trying to live more and more that story, right? That's story, or that's the reality. We feel that the motivation of the service providers is going to be the bottleneck, and they being enabled is how customers will get great service, and that needs this kind of openness and transparency, right? Yeah. So yeah,
I think there's I mean, if this whole thing gets unlocked, right? I mean, I think it could be just amazing, right? Truly amazing, because we have like 600 million internet users. It'll probably be 900 million or 1 billion users in another 3 to 4 years, right? So if you look at all of e-commerce, I think it's probably like 200 to 300 million maybe, right? PhonePe, I mean, Paytm has maybe around 300 million users, right? So give or take, right? To reach to that next level, and which is not small, right? I mean, which is a few hundred million. Something like this is essential for sure, right? I mean, you can't wait till people are literate enough. You can't wait till people are, have access to all of this and stuff till it gets there.
Yeah. WhatsApp people, how many people use WhatsApp and YouTube, right? So the internet penetration is, whether we call them literate or not, they are able to use it.
Yeah, they're able to use. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So Namma Yatri.
Sure.
So you were thinking about how do we make transport seamless? You were thinking about
and there's
payments.
A payments angle to it. That's how we thought about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you thought about how to make payments seamless for transport.
Yeah.
And then you found the backend protocol, and then you figured like, hey, let me figure a way to meet demand and supply together.
Yeah,
right?
the story, as your question was, how did we get in? A little bit to complete that.
Right.
So that has been the thought process. At the same time, this is a 4-year-old story. We always have this new projects that we explore and do the R&D. and to have few people, mostly it's freshers and interns who work in Juspay and learn from all these projects. We have this whole the education idea before Juspay. In a way, inside we want to make it a Juspay university. So when some of these new projects come in, new people with a lot of first principles, inside principles, technology, reliability principles, performance principles, all these things people get introduced to. And when they are working on a real problem, there is time to learn also. When some of these newer projects come in, the initial time, do version 1, refactor, rewrite, do it again, do it again. Okay. So it has gone to something like that, and that some freshers would have learned immense from a project like this, right? From our directional perspective, it had been that a new initiative is happening, and we will have a role to play there. Maybe other people will build the other software. Maybe we can be a payments provider, and let's be around this to do some of the initial work, and our people will also learn. So that is how it was a very independent project, which uses the approach of Juspay in terms of platforms. The way we build UPI switch, that same approach is used for Namma Yatri. But apart from that, it is not something that it took a lot of our mind share. Except that the people who really wanted to build, right? The people who are freshers themselves, they are able to relate to the use case. In fact, ferry booking for Kochi was built. In fact, it was launched in Kochi. How to do metro booking, that was explored. Parking, so many things people. And while doing all of this, people learned. One thing we kept alive is, okay, even if you do many things, keep the core the same. Because we don't know what will work. Maybe around India, some opportunity anywhere could work out. Keep it very modular and building blocks oriented, such that we don't know what is the vertical use case yet. We also don't know what we will try to somehow find a use case. There is a lot of uncertainty there, but the cost is also less. It is a very independent team in Juspay who was doing it, right? And
which is also, I mean, it's amazing, right? Because if you think about like the ride-hailing business, I mean, Uber is probably valued at $30 or $40 billion, right? Ola is maybe like $4 or $5 billion, maybe more, I don't know, right? I mean, and they're staffed with thousands of engineers running something like this, right? And then here you're talking about an experiment within a company, right? A few, I would say, tens of engineers building something like this. And today, I mean, Namma Yatri is doing 100K plus rides a day, right? About 22 lakh people using it, and yet everything works, right? I downloaded your app. I mean, it's extremely seamless. I know people who swear by it. I mean, they first book on Namma Yatri now. That's a behavioral change that's happened.
Sure.
How does all of this happen with a bunch of, a few tens of people doing this as a side project?
Sure. Good question, and we are still learning. What you're asking is a very exciting thing for me, whether it's Namma Yatri or anything else that we do. How do we do more with less? In fact, we have 7 principles for Juspay. The first principle is maximize value creation. And how do you create value? You do more with less. Because even if we have this much funding, what if that is less only? Right? That means that we have to do more. And that more comes from that creative act that we talked about in arts. We talked about how Ilayaraja would compose. And why not an intern also have it? Is something that I'm excited about. I don't know is there a solution? Is there a formula recipe for it? But we are trying to figure that out some level, right? For myself, for others also, right? So how can we come up with the next right move, which is the right thing to do? If our people are able to, every key they type is correct, how easy it would be to build all this, how to get that insight. And sometimes we also take the harder route. The kind of technologies that we have chosen, initially hard to learn, something like Haskell, but people really get good at it. And initially there was challenge and questions and why are we doing it and all of that. But after our people have experienced that, they become very good engineers. You don't need architects to tell them certain things. It is more bottom up, like how the Roman numerals versus Indian numbers. Just makes it simple. There are a lot of good building blocks that we have chosen in technology, which makes good software automatically. That is one.
I want to delve deeper on that, right? Because this whole point about architects versus engineers, because I think typically, like the way, I mean, if you look at an engineering team, the way it scales, right? It cannot scale with X number of architects for every, I don't know what it is, right? I mean, 20X type of developers and so on, right? Because things will go out of hand, right? But what are those decisions you've made to sort of build that engineering
Sure.
culture?
Sure. Um, our we don't have so much of the typical architects. We have mostly engineers who have gotten insight and have become architects in their through their direct experience, right? The typical the Java architect has a lot of we should do it this way, that way, all of that whole big area
Correct.
of recipes are there. I myself couldn't understand many of those. And that is when I went into arts also. The business logic I couldn't understand. Things are too complex and complicated. So that's when I was looking forward to better engineering methods. Is there something that is simple? I saw simplicity in Lisp. With very few building blocks, it is solving many problems. It is beautiful. It is just many things have become simple.
Because I think a lot of the time, I mean, this is again a very non-tech version of this. Architects spend more time in design than actually code, right? Which is that how things have to be built versus actually building it. Is that correct in saying?
Sure. See, but sometimes that how is also
It's important, of course.
It's important. There is also a musician who's just composing and it is working, right? So there is both sides to it. There is both sides. There is definitely company-wide architectural decisions that we take, and we, for example, we have taken an approach where a lot of systems work in replicated memory. It doesn't need to hit the database, and that is amazingly reducing cost. There is something called CQRS architecture. All of that is there. Some kind of a version of that. And what it looks like is there is this whole compute and some kind of a storage closer to compute, like a scratch space. You can call it a scratch space.
Right, notepad types.
Yeah, notepad types. And you can create a kind of a reliable scratch space, which is very cheap. And that is the most important area. And most of the systems are working in that mode, right? Like a Namma Yatri trip is happening there. And then the log of that then goes and gets persisted somewhere. And that problem is a different problem. And that can be done in the cheapest way. You can dump it into object store. The Namma Yatri strips can even go to the object store. So the typical approach of the typical 3-tier database architecture, in fact, we are looking at polyglot persistence. And many of these are more black and white. So we are taking decisions which are not like a hazy decision where I couldn't understand. A lot of architecture talk is also sometimes not very clear. It's not black and white. So we try to make decisions which are black and white that an intern I should be able to. There is something called Feynman technique. If you explain something, a kid should understand, right?
Exactly.
So if it is not like that, I myself don't understand. That has been my problem in the architecture space as an engineer myself. And when we make some of our major architectural choices very black and white, then a new person also becomes like an architect because it's obvious for them.
Exactly.
Right? And more and more, and it's also not very easy. Sometimes an internet blog will say something and people will ask, Netflix is doing this. Can we do Netflix way and all of that? Our thing is always like, the direct experience. How will it really work? Maybe one is the cost and performance has also been a very good pillar for us. Like, can we calculate the reliability? Can we calculate the cost? And we have found out an architecture which, at the least cost, it is giving the best performance and reliability, right? So that kind of going after the direct experience and first principles, I'm able to see interns are able to get it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. How does, let's say a founder is listening to this, how do they build that engineering culture within their organizations? Because you work with a lot of freshers, right? And you have a very, I would say, organized training program for these folks as well, right? And you're able to do so much more with less, right? Your productivity is off the charts, I would say, right? What are some 2 or 3 things that they should keep in mind for building such an engineering team?
See, we have a lot been inspired by system software. Some of the things which are really done well, like Linux, like how a database works.
Right.
The application software, can it be like system software? That is one thumb rule that we try to take. Again, it's contextual. I don't know whether I have an answer for every company. For maybe it could apply to many companies too. Can application software be built like system software? Because system software has been very reliable, it has been very cost effective, it has been scalable, it has been commoditized, configurable also. Take an operating system which has been so performant and at the same time so configurable. There is a lot of inspiration that we can derive from some of the earlier classical work which is done, which we can call as classical track. Go and respect and learn from the classical track. That is one. And the other thing is a lot of new things keep coming up. We went a little bit off from that. We at some point we were doing Node.js and JavaScript. Every day some new library will come up, and I am also researching that, installing that, and seeing it, and all of that, right? So at some point we got off that, and there is no Stack Overflow usage, right?
Oh,
Like we are using Haskell, right?
Right.
And but actually ChatGPT is working for Haskell like any other language, which is great.
Right.
We are able to now get back. Otherwise, we used to be like, we don't have that immediate help from internet.
Right.
We have to figure it out.
Right.
Because in Haskell, a library would be like, a lot of times just one file. The library will be one file and it's concisely written. You can just go to the so going down the stack is easy. That is another thing. So when we were using the some of the, let's say, JVM technologies and all, getting into a library and finding things out used to feel like a big thing.
Yeah.
Here it's an everyday thing. For our people, they can get down the library, inside the library and see. They can get into the compiler and see. So we have actively pushed for building these kind of skills, like a framework team. And it needs a particular size. If you're a very small company also, when we were very small, we didn't have the time for it. But we made certain choices to build some of the frameworks ourselves. Initially, it is the harder route, but the kind of learning and the confidence our people have because of that is amazing. And we reuse and also rebuild certain areas. And sometimes we have built certain things and we have taken that off and put another engine, which is a reuse. When few years before, we didn't have it outside. Now we have taken something from outside and plug it in, right? And I also get a lot of inspiration from the older engineering. How is a car working? How is an aircraft working? Though it is a lot slower moving areas, but definitely the reliability and for example, there are a lot of reliability techniques. There is something called FMEA, failure modes and effects analysis, which is not at all there in software engineering, which I found very inspiring from the older industries. Because their bar for reliability is much higher.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly for airplanes, at least. Right.
And they use, many of these are outside available. Something called reliability block diagram, and whereas the software has UML, and that also has some good stuff. Some areas are messed up. So we are looking at engineering a little bit more broader, maybe, if I answer that.
Right.
Like some of the classical stuff, older engineering,
Right.
learning from that also, and finding the equivalent for that in software.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's core R&D, I would say, right? Fantastic. What is the best part of building Namma Yatri? Like, what are the kind of experiences you've had? Like, have auto drivers come and told you that, earlier we were at the mercy of platforms, the costs and the incentives were very ambiguous, and we would not have consistent payouts and so on and so forth. And today, I'm able to see a more predictable sort of an income and so on. Like, or have users come to you and said that, I tried to book a cab from Koramangala to Bangalore and it was always impossible, and Namma Yatri makes it possible and so on. So what are the best experiences of having built Namma Yatri?
Definitely, there are lots of positive reviews, right? which is all great. Then we always think about, always there is a high and then we have to maintain it. We have to. Is it like, okay? Oh, hope it's not a hype, right?
No,
We also,
users are so
yeah,
fickle, right? I mean, one moment they may love
yeah.
you for everything, and then the next moment they might say like app not working, right? Or give a 1 star or something like that. Oh God.
So,
Yeah.
but what we found as surprise, or what our learning had been, right? What we thought as maybe this could work, and we did it and it worked. One of the interesting things is you are seeing it as enabling the driver, but we saw the customers want to enable the driver. I think that one we have been trying to engineer, because it is not like Namma Yatri can enable the drivers. How much can we do? We are giving the software, we are making it cheaper, we are reducing the cost.
Right. You don't charge per ride. I mean, you charge a subscription fee.
Subscription fee.
Right. Okay.
25 rupees per day.
Right.
For unlimited rides, or 3.5 rupees per trip if they don't want unlimited. If they are taking 2-3 rides only,
Right.
3.5 rupees per trip. Yeah.
But it's way more transparent compared to know, the platforms and so on.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like they are our customers, right? We are still a B2B company in a way, if you can look at it that way. Right. And one of the realizations, obviously the first realization is which we talked about, that the service provider has to be enabled. We underestimated what it takes to enable the service provider, because auto drivers, they were happy. There were these top auto drivers who inspired us. There were auto drivers who were, there is one driver who only would take a Namma Yatri and he was making 3,000 rupees per day and all. Next kind of. Even when the traffic was less, he will go from one place to another, even larger distance, and take a trip, right? And he doesn't talk at all much.
Right.
Just does it, and he will give us feedback. This thing today, something went wrong, and we will find, oh yeah, when we are scaling and doing everyday releases are going on.
Right.
If we miss something, because we had to build the guardrails, it took some time for us. Like in Juspay, we have it for payments. When we do a release, automatically detecting issues, all these, all of that right now is a lot of things are built. So what we found is customers, the Bangalore people, want to have a good system, I think, and they see that this is a good system enabling the service providers. I think that's why the word of mouth is happening.
Yeah.
And see, we were doing a little bit of field trials to drive and see what is to be a driver, because we.
So did you drive an auto?
Yeah, some level. Yeah. So my first trip was like a mother with a kid. I have an electric auto, and just nearby in this area only, I'm trying it out. How does it feel to be like? And I had so many things that auto itself can improve. It started becoming getting into that area itself, right?
So is someone working on a side project to make a make a rickshaw?
At least we think we can make an open source hardware spec, right? What would be the best, from all our learnings? What is the right seat? What are because like it's workspace, just like how you are worried about, getting the best mic, getting the best chair, getting the ergonomic work setup. It is workspace, right? We look at auto drivers as people who need a good working environment, right? So in that, my first experience was the kind of respect that I got from customers. I'm saying a little bit, few experiments only I did, but immediately that, oh, this is nice. This is like, okay, customers are trusting me, right? And when I'm doing this work, customers are happy and some value I am adding. That feeling. And there was one customer who was saying, it's all your app. It's like you have all become big people. Superb only. Like this. And I was also having this one guy, software engineer, who was like getting inside auto, getting out. He was buying some snacks and eating. I was going till the signal. Before the signal, he runs and gets in.
Right. Wow.
I'm like trying to find out, what should I do, and all of that. But it's like interesting. Even that work was, I was feeling, what is it to be? What is it to do that work, right? And what are the things that we have to do around it, right? And we said our people that one of the other learnings we had is look at the auto drivers as a subject, not an object. Because typically, these are the segments of customers. segment A, we should do this, which is also important to think like that. But what is it? If I am an auto driver, what would I want? So that you be a customer and think, you be an auto driver and think. I think this has been a big learning for our entire team. And that I have been surprised by how our team has been doing it, and how they are continuing to do it. And that unlocking the empathy in the customers has been my biggest, happiness.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's working. Like the customers are liking it, right? Customers want to enable the drivers, and how to keep this both sides happening transparently. Right? Customers, it's not like customer can just see. It's not a machine, right? It is not like you have bought a washing machine and you can just operate. It is not a service which is a machine in the other side. It is a person in the other side.
Yeah.
So the customer also needs to respect the person, and the service provider has to give a very good service to the customer, right? And this whole thing has to happen. And to make that happen, what are the small things that we can do? And we tried small things, and when we see it working, it's a completely new thing for us, for engineering and product people. This is this empathy side also, right? Which we are learning a lot. And we are seeing this Bangalore folks are awesome, and they are showing that some new approach is possible.
Right. So do you plan to take this to other cities, other parts of the country, maybe internationally and so on?
Definitely there is demand, and Kolkata government wanted it, and since it's open source software, they were evaluating, can they take it and run it, and they asked us, can you run it? So in that regard, it's launched by the Kolkata government as Yatri Sati. That's another model.
Okay.
We also saw that in Kolkata, getting prepaid taxis digitized and all, we will not be able to do it. It needed more government to coordinate a lot, and it's working in railway stations and all these places. We saw that we can be a service provider, right? So such a thing has been, and there also the focus is enabling the service provider. We saw the government, the folks who work there, to be very wanting to innovate in that way. They wanted the drivers to feel happy, and they wanted people to feel happy in Kolkata. And Kolkata itself is a city of happiness type.
City of joy, right? Yeah. City of joy.
City of joy. Yeah. And it is opening its own flavor. And another learning with Namma Yatri is how to localize it, how to make it part of that city or a state.
Right.
That means the local folks have to come and participate and make it work. Right. So that is why it is not about just launching it everywhere. It is about, can we have a micro entrepreneur take it and run it in a small city? So once we have understood enough, I think and some more use cases are also there. It could spread in a different way. And we also don't want to go and fight, saying taking an existing market share of something that's already working, let it work. This transportation is a much larger area to be digitized, right? So get it right in few places and let it spread organically also. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't want to call this also a utility, but I feel like ride sharing platforms and so on, right? I mean, again, it is so good, right, and such a ubiquitous need that something like this is it's essential, right, in order for things to scale, because obviously it is not something the government can operate, right? And if private players were to do this, I mean, you're going to have this case of like a winner takes all sort of a market, right? So some kind of like a Namma Yatri type of innovation is definitely the solution in some sense, right?
See, the utility part, to touch upon that a bit more, the multimodal has to happen, and government will also participate.
Yes.
The government would be a big player in this, because they manage a lot of the utility part, and to have systems which government can also would want to take it and use it, or government will want to partner and work together, is also part of the solution, I feel. Only then that true utility will happen. And one other idea also we are very gung-ho about is there has to be new types of vehicles which have to come up. Because of EV, it is easy to manufacture vehicles. And the first principles for performance, there is one which is very clear, which shows up even in computers, which is batching and parallelism. Like even if you look at, for example, in AI, the transformer architecture versus the old one, those micro batches are happening. So it's there always everywhere. This on-demand, one-to-one, one service provider, one person or few people versus one service provider to many people has to happen. And a train is very big, bus is big. There has to be something in between an auto and a bus. Some kind of a shuttle, which is a custom designed one, which I keep talking everywhere. Somebody is going to build it. Maybe we can do an open source design. There are manufacturers who can do it. And that will also need software innovation, because the booking experience won't be exactly like the current point to point. So it will be semi-flexible routes, but batching will happen. You can maybe walk from your home to a... We are in a smaller road right now, this place where we are. We can walk to the small main road, little bit, 200 meters, 100 meters.
Right.
And you exactly when you go there, you know when that vehicle will come in, you can hop in, hop out. And to hop in, hop out also should be super easy to get in, get out, like auto.
Right.
What if there is an extended auto? Right. A little bit wider and a bit extended.
Which is typically how it works if you like go to let's say the outskirts of villages and so on, right? I mean,
E-rickshaws
buses stop
and
at different places, rickshaws stop at different places and so on, right? I mean,
but it's not digitized, it's not comfortable.
Not digitized,
But what if it is as comfortable as a car?
Yeah.
That innovation is possible, because with low cost, you can get high comfort. And the driver earnings will be more, the customer will pay less. And more bigger challenges in technology will be there, and it's technology solvable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. This is going to be a very different podcast because I think we've stretched from science and philosophy to really asking the fundamental questions, right? Why we're doing certain things, and you've delved deeper on all of these very nuanced concepts and try to explain it to our listeners. So that's awesome. One last question, right? Which is that, you seem like the person with a scientific temper. Like you have an engineer's heart, I would say, in terms of like being a tinkerer and solving things just for the joy of solving things. How do you learn everything else with respect to running a business, right? Because you're running a successful startup and you've made all of these ideas viable, right? From a commercial perspective, which I think a lot of people might take inspiration from as well. I mean, because others who may be similarly oriented, right? I mean, folks who are like tinkerers, engineers, they want to learn all of these other things. What has helped you learn all these things?
I'm still a tinkerer only. I'm still doing hands-on work.
Right.
When you build something for yourself, and when you see a bit of universality in what you build for yourself, others also use it and they buy it, they find value, they will pay some portion of the value that you have given to them. That is what a business is. Business is about sharing the value that you create, right? So in that regard, my or everybody's approach is going to be maximize the value creation. That's what doesn't have a limit. The amount of value you can create, which could be the right insight you might get anytime. Who knows, when you are tinkering, maybe you are listening to a music or whatever it is. It doesn't need to be only tinkerers, right? We are, I call there are two types of motives that we have as whoever we are. We couldn't find ourselves where we are really, right? So we are two things. We want to understand whatever we are. We want to deeply understand. The first principles question is about, we call it the depth of understanding. There is another aspect to us, which is the depth of expression. Right? Let's say I am a dancer, and I want to be, in fact, I want an audience. You can say it's a dual of the understanding. You want somebody else to understand you, right? In both of these, when you go deeper, right, you get to a place where you are both. In fact, there is an interesting phrase I've heard: "Dance like no one is watching."
Right.
So if somebody is a creator who just creates, doesn't need to, who's not the science person who's breaking, asking why and going the reductionist approach, they are a emergent creator. There also that depth is there.
Right.
So to maximize that value creation, it's that depth of understanding and depth of expression. Maximize it. Right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Vimal, for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation, and there are so many things that I'll probably be reflecting upon, for days and weeks to come. And certainly, hopefully, not the last time we speak as well, right? I mean, would love to have you back and talk about some other innovations. Maybe like by that time we have that hardware for transport that you mentioned, right? That or the multimodal
Sure.
system or something else, right? One thing I know, it's going to be exciting and it's going to be stuff that people will love, right? For sure. Yeah. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for being on the
Yeah,
podcast.
thank you.
Thanks for joining us, folks, and I hope you like this. If you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of the good stuff. I'll see you on another episode of the Startup Operator podcast. Thank you.